Hi, welcome everyone. Today is October 6th, 2022, and you are here at the 3 at 3 Live with Angela James. And today I'm going to be answering 3 questions about publishing that were submitted by you and are things that you are interested in. So if you are ever interested in submitting a question, you can do so via the link in the video description, and I will answer that at the next 3 at 3. They are held every other week. So I am going to get started because we try and keep these quick so that they are quick lunchtime learning type bites. Today's question, the first question is, what is the difference between traditional publishing and vanity publishing? Can you please talk about the different models of publishers? This is a really good question. I actually did a presentation in Alaska last week, and we were talking about the difference between traditional publishing and vanity publishing. So this is fresh in my mind. So traditional publishing, a few things happen. First is the money flows to the writer. So when people used to talk about publishing, they used to always say money flows towards the writer. That's not always true anymore for all publishing models, especially self-publishing, because in self-publishing, you are paying out of pocket. But in traditional publishing, it is still true that money flows towards the writer. What that means is that for a traditional publishing contract, you excuse me, you are either getting an advance model contract, which means that you're getting money in an advance. Advance is now kind of a misnomer. It's not the right word, because a lot of payments are being split, not just to on delivery of manuscript and on publication, but now they're also being split to after publication, up to a year after publication. So the word advance is a little bit deceptive now. But in traditional publishing, you're either going to get the advance model, or you're going to get the no advance and usually higher digital royalties model. So those are two of the traditional publishing models. When we're talking about vanity publishing wants you to pay to publish. So anytime somebody asks you to pay to publish, it is vanity publishing. This past weekend, when somebody was asking me about this vanity publishing model, they said, well, they're asking me to pay to publish, but they don't accept everything. And I explained that is still vanity publishing. If you are paying, it is vanity publishing, full stop. Traditional publishing does not ask you to pay. Now, of course, traditional publishing does ask you to participate in marketing activities, and some of those may cost you money because they want you to market your book. You want to market your book, and the publisher may not have a huge budget for marketing. So you may want to put money into marketing, but that's not paying to get the book published. Vanity publishing is paying to get the book published. So anytime that money is flowing away from you in the publishing contract, they're asking you to pay for the editor, they're asking you to pay for formatting, they're asking you to pay to publish the book, to get it published, that's vanity publishing. So hopefully that's clear. There are some other kind of models out there. For instance, there's some agents now who are offering assisted publishing. In assisted publishing, you're splitting some of the costs, you're splitting the royalties. It looks a little bit different than traditional publishing. So it's more like assisted self-publishing versus vanity publishing and traditional publishing. So that's just a different model, a different way of looking at it. So hopefully that makes it clear as far as what the difference is between traditional publishing and vanity publishing, just in a quick overview. There's other kind of nuances, of course. Traditional publishing is going to have a relationship with bookstores. They're going to have a relationship with retailers like Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Target, Indigo, Books A Million in the US and Canada. Those are a couple of examples. Vanity publishers aren't going to be able to offer you that. They're going to be able to give you copies of your book, but you're not going to find it on the shelves of bookstores. They're not going to have relationships with those retailers. They're not worried about acquiring a book, quote unquote, acquiring a book, and whether or not the retail buyer is going to be interested in it. The retail buyer being the person at Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, wherever, who's responsible for stocking the shelves, so to speak. Vanity Publishing's not worried about that because they're not trying to get your book into retailers. All they're doing is creating the book, hooking you up with some resources. They're not necessarily always the best resources, such as not the best editors, not the best copy editors, not the best cover artists. And of course, you're required to pay for all of those. So in most cases, people suggest that you either do self-publishing or you do traditional publishing. However, the one benefit of vanity publishing is that you don't have to figure out all of the things that you have to figure out in self-publishing. So if you are somebody who says, I want to write this memoir, traditional publishing is not going to pick it up. I do want to self-publish it, but I don't want to figure out all the self-publishing steps and what all that entails, then vanity publishing might be the route for you to go, because vanity publisher is going to ask you for money, just like anybody on your team would, and they're going to get it done for you. So vanity publishing, though people speak not well of it, is an option that some people do want to consider. So there you go. There's a little bit of an overview between vanity publishing and traditional publishing. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I probably won't necessarily see the comments live, but I will see the comments and can answer in text after this. All right, the second question. I heard you use the term toxic positivity in a workshop I took from you. What is toxic positivity? What do you mean by that? I don't know if this is like a thing that somebody else said, but it's a phrase that I have used for a while now. I don't think I picked it up somewhere. It was kind of just like something I conjured in my mind. But toxic positivity is that culture of support that is actually not always as helpful or critical as it needs to be. So just as an example, where you say, I'm gonna, like I don't think I want to hire an editor. I don't think I want to hire a cover artist. And I don't really like romance that much, but I want to publish this romance that I wrote. So I'm just gonna publish it without getting it edited. I'm gonna slap together a cover and I'm just gonna do it. So toxic positivity would be a whole bunch of people coming into the comments of your post and being like, yes, you got this. Don't worry. Like it's gonna be 100% great and there's nothing to worry about. You should totally do this. You can do this. You go, person, you go, and you get it. So toxic positivity is when people just support what you're saying without bringing in any kind of critical suggestions or critical thought. So sometimes when you're thinking of doing something, you do just want support, and it's okay to say not looking for feedback, just looking for support. But there's times when you just may make the statement that you're going to do something that may be bad for your career, may be bad for your brand, and people are just like, yep, got you 100%, instead of saying, okay, well, have you considered this, or have you considered this? So toxic positivity is when somebody cheerleads you without giving it any thought, or without thinking, you know what, I could offer some helpful feedback. I could offer some advice. And again, not everybody is always looking for advice, but toxic positivity takes it to the next level where there's just no thought behind the cheerleading and isn't kind of like helpful. It's not, it's too positive. So in the business world, a great example of this is when somebody is just starting out in their business. So let's say me 20 years ago. If somebody is just like me starting out 20 years ago and they're thinking, okay, I'm going to create this course, I'm going to create this asset, I'm going to be an editor, and I'm going to charge the top dollar amount for this. And in the business world, toxic positivity looks like people going, yeah, charge your worth, you charge that top dollar, rather than saying, hey, you know what, I think you should get some experience under your belt. I think you should think about testing some things out and making sure that the course is great. Your editing skills are up to par. And so just say, and instead of offering, again, some critical thought behind it, people go, yeah, charge your worth, and just encourage somebody who's brand new to charge top dollar. That's what toxic positivity can look like. If that's just an example, it can look many different ways um, it can look many different ways in publishing, but you have to be careful of not just giving being toxically positive, but also receiving toxic positivity and letting it drive your decisions. So when I talk about toxic positivity, usually it's in the context of, instead of seeking out a supportive community that's going to give you both critical feedback and support, you seek out a couple of people who are just always going to support what you're going to do without giving any critical feedback. So you never get any other opinions or thoughts on the matter. So I see a couple of comments here that people say they've heard of toxic positivity in therapy sessions, and someone's example is just think positively and you'll be fine. Yes, that is another one. Or another example of toxic positivity is saying something like, all you have to do is just find time to write every day. And sometimes toxic positivity takes advice and becomes ableist, or it becomes harmful. So toxic positivity can look different in different situations, and you just need to be able to recognize that, and be open to feedback, but you don't have to be open to everybody's feedback also. That's a whole nother topic. So, just keep in mind that toxic positivity does exist, and we need to be careful of it in the environments that we're in. Okay, again, if you have any questions about that, you can drop it into the comments. I can see some comments, maybe not all, but I will go back and type in any answers that I have if I miss your comments. Last question number 3. Do you have any advice for finding critique partners? I think about this a lot because people ask me this question pretty often. And again, I was in Alaska this past weekend, and I was meeting with, I met with a critique group there. There were like, I think 3 or 4 people who were in a critique group, and they were there, and we had roundtable where we did critiques of first pages. And there was a new writer who sat at my table and did round critiques, and he was a very thoughtful in his critique. And he was then later in some workshops that I ran, very thoughtful in the critique. And I just thought to myself, he's going to be a really great critique partner for somebody because of how thoughtful he is in his responses. And I said that to the critique group, hey, if you're looking for somebody else to add to your critique group, scoop that person up. So all that to say is one place to look for critique partners is when you're going to conferences and there are roundtables and critiques like that, and seeing if there's anybody that you match. The biggest thing about finding a critique partner is you can't wait for somebody to come and find you. You are going to have to put yourself out there. And this is pretty difficult for some authors because some authors are very introverted, or they're shy, or they feel uncertain about putting themselves out there. But if you know that you want a critique partner, the best way to find a critique partner is to start asking people. And that is to start asking in the communities that you're in. So whether it's from Written to Recommended, whether it's the Book Boss community, the Success Alliance, or whether it's a Facebook group or something else like that. 2 things. One, you can put up a post and say, hey, I'm looking for a critique partner, and see who responds. Or if there's somebody whose vibe that you really like, you can put yourself out there and say, hey, are you looking for a critique partner? Would you be interested in being a critique partner with me? So both of those things require you to be a little bit vulnerable, which I know is scary. But most people who can't find critique partners because of 2 reasons. One, because they're not putting themselves out there. They're waiting for somebody to come to them. And 2, they're looking in the wrong spaces, meaning they might be a romance writer who's looking in a kind of all general fiction group. So make sure you're also looking in specific spaces where people are writing the same things as you. This is not to say that you have to have critique partners who all write the same things as you, but it is easier to get targeted feedback if somebody is familiar with the genre that you're writing. One of the things that I have heard often throughout my years in publishing from people who are in critique groups that aren't working for them, or there's something that they don't like, is because there's somebody who doesn't understand the romance genre at all. And so when they critique, they don't have helpful advice. They don't, they're not interested. They're like, oh, romance, I don't read this, so I don't know, romance. Or, the same goes for if you're writing science fiction, fantasy, thrillers, domestic suspense, historical fiction, memoirs, biographies. All of those do require some insight into the genre that you're writing. So you do want to have some people who are, if not writing the same thing, at least interested in what you're writing, who have familiarity with the genre, because you're not likely to take advice on a memoir from somebody who's never read a memoir. You're probably not going to take advice on world building your high fantasy from somebody who's never read high fantasy. So there is some kind of, I don't want to say requirement, but you are going to get better critique if it's somebody who has familiarity with the genre that you're writing. Now, that said, you can get, kind of generic writing advice from people, not specific necessarily to the story, but maybe talking about your craft, things like that. So, I mean, it is possible, but finding a critique partner is going to require you to put yourself out there in the right spaces. Now, the next thing that I want to point out, and this is something that I've given in a bonus before, is when you have a critique partner, setting kind of guidelines. I was going to say rules, but guidelines for the critique sessions so that everybody starts from the same place of understanding. So let me give you an example. When I did roundtable critiques this weekend, I go in and I say, okay, here's how this is going to work. Whichever of you goes first, you're going to read your sample. The rest of us are going to follow along because we have the page in front of us. We're going to mark it up. I'm going to give you my feedback, and I'm going to give you my feedback from the experience, from the reader's experience, and what I'm seeing from a general market experience. I'm going to give you both critical feedback and positive feedback, and you don't have to take any of my advice, but I'm going to give you what I see or what I'm thinking at the moment. When the rest of you give feedback, what I would like you to do is make sure that your feedback is helpful and not just from a place of, well, I don't really like the word moist, so don't use moist. That's not helpful. Instead, I want you to be giving critical feedback based on how the reader is going to experience the story. And I also want to make sure that you're giving the feedback kindly and constructively. And I want you to make sure that you're giving positive feedback. People who receive the feedback, your job is to be open to the feedback. Make notes, ask questions. Again, you don't have to take any of this feedback, but that's your job. So I'd set up the parameters there. Other parameters I set up are how much time that you have, asking people not to dominate the conversation, asking people to be engaged. So we just set up some really quick parameters when we start the critiques. And I do this very quickly because we don't want to spend a lot of time setting up the parameters. But having the parameters helps people feel comfortable because people are more comfortable when they have a container within which to act. And so when you set up critique partners, when you set up groups, you're going to find it's going to be a more positive experience if you're all on the same page. And that pun was totally unintentional. But you're going to find it's going to be a better experience because there's not going to be as many misunderstandings. There's not going to be as much miscommunication. People are coming at it from the same place and point of view, everybody with the same understanding of what's expected and how to make this a give and take relationship. So once you've found your critique partner, ask them what they're looking for. You need to know what you're looking for and what your expectations are. And they need to have the same. You need to discuss those before you just dive into critiquing other people's work. So, all that said, I have a dog. I have a dog throwing up next to me. Hopefully that was helpful. And wow, this is like the beauty of live Zoom is the dog throwing up next to me. So hopefully those answers to all of your questions were helpful. We will be back in 2 weeks. We do these every 2 weeks with the next 3 at 3. So you have plenty of time to get your questions in. If you have any questions about what I answered today, you can drop it in the comments and I will come back and check and make sure they answer. Thanks so much for joining me. Please share these with your friends. Let them know that they can answer questions too. And I will see you next time. Thanks very much. And everybody have a wonderful weekend.